Fantastic. Welcome to the 4th Annual Counselor Conference on Technology, Jobs, and the Future of Work. The DSN team has worked really hard to create a day for you that will inspire and give thoughts and ideas and synergies and connections. So we're just really excited to have you here. This conference would not have been possible without the dedication and support of the Central Motherlode Regional Consortium and their chair, Carrie Hammerstrom. So thank you very much. At this time, we would also like to work, as you know, with any conference. The work for this started probably about 8-9 months ago. And so lots of emails and phone calls. So could the DSN Navigator team and anyone who helped with the conference please stand so that we can recognize you for your work. So a lot of honors today. I'm very honored to introduce a tireless advocate for career technology. Individual who came to our district and really helped us turn a corner at State Center. So I'd like to introduce our Chancellor, Dr. Paul Parnell, to say a few words of welcome.
Wow, what a great group. I'm really honored to be here with all of you, and I've had a chance to talk to a few people. I've heard that this is a great day because it's a Friday from one group. It is a Friday. I've heard lots of stories about how you've made great connections with our local business people. I want to congratulate all of our deputy sector navigators. If any of you were like me, I heard the first term deputy sector navigator about, I was the president of Norco College before I got here, so it's over 3 years ago. And I'm thinking of people coming out in these white helmets like in Star Wars, and they're laser people, lasering people all over the place. Anyway, so but I do want to thank the deputy sector navigators for setting all this up and making these connections. The work that you are already doing is incredible, and I know that. I know that I was just talking with some of our staff here. Julie was telling me, as a counselor, and she wasn't complaining to me, and I don't have any help for her either, but she's saying, well, this semester I have 1,000 students that I've got to get an education plan for. And so it doesn't take very long to do the math and take 1,000 students and the hours that you have in one semester and then figure out how are you going to do that with those 1,000 students. How much time are you going to give them? How are you going to help them? So I think the title to what you're doing here is Technology, Jobs, and the Future of Work. Well, as a counselor or as a student services support person, or even as a deputy sector navigator, you're going to be a lot more powerful if we give you the technology that you need to make that happen. So technology is part of your job. It's part of what we do right now. Tim Wood, we're talking about when we did our doctoral work and so on, and he's talking about something. I'd like to know how many in this room have ever heard of a Commodore computer? Oh, look at! If you stand up, look at the age of those people that are raising their hands. Really funny. Yeah. So. Things have happened very rapidly, and when you talk about the future of work, we don't know. We just absolutely do not know. Everybody, and you're probably doing this while I'm here, everybody has one of these. And these are outdated now. There's, they just came out yesterday, and they made all the other ones outdated. Apple did, I think. So it's changed the way we work and the way we live and how we communicate with people. At the same time, we also know that we have thousands and thousands of people across this valley. And I'll divert just a minute when we talk about the valley, because I was just talking with Carrie, and I appreciate the work that she's done. Don't you like the term Central Motherlode? It just makes you feel like you're in some rich kind of, it's something really valuable, the Motherlode. Anyway, and I know we've got people, because I've seen some of your name badges and things, people all the way from San Joaquin and over to West Hills and Modesto and Merced, all the way down to Bakersfield and College of Sequoias, and then all the people at the back that have all this information about all of our programs. And the challenge that you have, which is exactly why we need this kind of gathering, is for the deputy sector navigators and our counselors in all of our high schools. Someone introduced me to Johnny. I can't remember, where's Johnny out here? Somewhere? Oh, maybe he left after I knew I was going to talk about him. But anyway, Monica was telling me about how he's bringing people to Fresno City College from all over. And we have to work together. The valley is so big, whether you're at Bakersfield or San Joaquin, and I know we rotate these conferences, and I think it's really good that we do that. But it's so good that all of you have made this journey to come here, because we're going to be so much stronger if we work together, if we communicate, if we understand what programs each of us have up and down this valley, and that's so we are as efficient and effective, not just because we want to be efficient and effective, but it's for the thousands and thousands of students. I don't know about the other districts, but our district, we had over 60,000 students show up this fall. 60,000, that's 60,000 people that are looking to better their lives. 60% of that 60,000 are people that qualify for our, what was the Board of Governors waiver for tuition. That means that they are not people of wealth. And I was just talking, one of our new interns here was just talking to me about how she came from a family, first one in her family to come to college. And that's what most of our students, 60% of our students are people that come out of that. And they're in your high schools, and they're in the classes. They're the ones that you see at our doorsteps. And the better that we connect and coordinate between all of our staff, our high schools, and we align our programs. I'll use the example that Carrie gave me as we were having coffee here. If we align our ladders, if they're not aligned, our students are going to climb the ladder in high school, and there's going to be nothing there. So that's why we've got to talk, and we have to communicate about that. We've got to put those ladders together. One of the things is that all of us, all of you, as you talk, can talk to your superintendents, your presidents, your principals of your colleges, and say, as we get ready to take the funds, and we do have some funds this year that we can align, we are going to be so much more effective if we align those funds between high school and our community colleges and beyond. And this focus here, you'll see in the back, is on career technical education. One of the things that I love for our students that, and we were just talking about, that when you go directly from your high school and you go right to college, to a university, going to one of our community colleges is also going to college. If you choose a career technical program, it could change the whole trajectory of your life and your family's life. And you know that. And all of you, the more we talk about that, how we can line that up, and we can get people to be exploring. I was talking with, I can't remember who, I was talking with someone else before about if we let students explore at an early age, and we're talking about elementary school, and they start seeing what their God-given gifts and talents are at a very early age, and then we start guiding them, which is what all of you are dedicated to do, their chances of being successful are really great. I will give you an example of right here in our district, and it's true across the whole valley. I'm sure you have the same, these pockets of poverty. We have some great wealth in the valley, and we produce a lot of good things in manufacturing and in business and in hospitality and in all those career areas that we have, agriculture especially. But all of those take career technical kinds of positions. And so we need to be starting to change that going to college is not just going to university. That's great, and some of our students, that's exactly what they need to do, and there are places to go there, and we want them to go to our Cal States and our UCs. But most of our students, we have what they need at community colleges. We've got, if you look at the back, and I hope you do that, walk through all of the colleges and see all the technical programs, and the better we align those with our K-12s, the better we're going to do. The better we're going to do for those people to take them out of poverty. We have some of the greatest poverty in the United States of America right here in our 97301, 306 zip codes. And there have been studies that have been done about that. And you and me, we have the opportunity to change people's lives so that they're not living in poverty. And that's kind of what this is all about. Education is the way out of poverty. It's the way to provide equity It's a way to give hope, and it's a way to increase the economic productivity of all of us in this valley. So I hope that you feel that. I hope you feel how special you are. And sometimes you get lost in the cast of thousands out here, but I hope you understand that all those students that you touch and the people you see day in and day out, you're changing their lives. That's why I'm involved in the work that I am involved in education. I love what I do. I love thinking that maybe I'm making a little bit of a difference, and I hope you feel that same kind of hope that I do. You're going to hear some great things from business people. I think Irma's here, and she has a great story. And if you haven't already heard that, you've been down to Bitwise, and you see how someone can, all of a sudden, I think what her title of her conversation was an accidental CEO. And so that sounds intriguing. You're going to hear from Dr. Sonia Christian, and she's really leading the charge for all of us in the state about how do we do this guided pathways and how do we do that right. Really big projects, and there's some money there, but if we don't align it right, we're not going to make as much progress and help as many students as we can. So I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep having these conversations, keep getting together, keep driving the 100 miles from wherever you're coming from, or even coming from right next door to these kinds of get-togethers, and make them as productive as possible. And I hope you enjoy this weekend, enjoy the great fall weather here in Fresno. So thank you all for all that you do.
What a great message. For those that don't know, yesterday we actually took a busload of individuals on a pre-conference tour to Bitwise Industries and the Pie Shop. And we want to thank the leaders of those organizations, Irma Goldwyn and Mark Jackson, because it was great to see the counselors interact with these leaders who are helping put industry to us, to students, and making that student-to-industry connection. And it really is kind of the theme for today. And I am under orders to be brief. So I would like to introduce Dr. Sonia Christensen, because now the most important thing we found out, she's a huge Matrix fan. So much so that her pet is named Neo. So I'm honored to introduce Bakersfield College's 10th president, advocate for student achievement, and genuinely mother of Neo.
Well, good morning. Was the conference last year in Bakersfield?
Yes.
Okay, that was great. And I want to start by saying, do you guys know the Clovis Police Department? Do you? Do they give tickets? Okay. So at the corner of Veterans, I was right about ready to make a left turn. I got a ticket. Okay, all right. So Grace doesn't bring it up. Grace Camiso from Bakersfield College, Counseling Department Dean. So she's right behind me, and she doesn't even save me from the cop who gave me a ticket. But good morning, everyone. Great message from the chancellor. And is the CEO of Bitwise here? Not yet? Okay. I would love to hear her presentation as well, because Bitwise also has an academy called Geekwise. And I think one of the challenges is we're looking at the future of our workforce and the future of the academy. And the academy is sort of entrenched in tradition where we have our credit hours and our seat time. And the big question that at Bakersfield College we're wrestling with is, how can we come up with a model of converting something like a Geekwise Academy, learning that happens, into our certificates and our degrees, and can we create those models that are scalable? So what is happening right here in Fresno is amazing. There's lots of innovative things that we're watching and we would like to adopt. I love your message, Chancellor, about community colleges, K through 12, counselors, faculty, really creating the conditions for hope, creating the conditions for transformation, and creating the pathways from poverty. What an amazing message as we start our day together. So my talk today was mostly focused on guided pathways when I realized from Elise that many of you are counselors in high schools. So could you please stand up so I kind of have a sense of the proportion? Counselors from high schools. All right. First of all, I do think that when we're continuing our work with Guided Pathways, the role of the counselor is going to be even more dominant. The leadership of counselors are even more critical, because the reality is that when we talk about pathways and what students need to take, looking at the end in mind and then reverse engineering the pathway for the students, we know, you and I know, that you've been doing it for a long time. Right from high school, when you have partnered with your colleagues in community colleges. Now, the rest of us educators did not get it because we sort of talked about higher education in a cafeteria model. It was like, okay, well, students are going to come, they're going to get a series of classes, and we were sort of passive in the engagement. But you were never passive in your engagement. You were always looking at creating that student ed plan. You were always looking at all of the programs with the student at the center. You did not approach it from a programmatic standpoint, the institution standpoint. The institution was secondary. The student was primary. It was always about the student journey. And so as I've been evolving in my own understanding, initially as a faculty member and now as president, to understanding pathways and the Guided Pathways approach, the reality is that the single department that really led that conversation was the counseling department, and it's almost as if the entire college is being converted into the mindset that counselors had for a long time. So good morning, counselors. I'm so honored to be with you here today. And the second thing I'm honored about is career technical education. Because what is Guided Pathways? It is providing clarity. It is being able to show clearly how little roadways and how the highways are all interconnected. So students didn't need to stop and start again or get into dead ends, right? That's the idea of Guided Pathways. And our CTE colleagues did it a long time ago. Our transfer colleagues didn't do it because transfer colleagues were all about the cafeteria model in my perspective. I started as a math faculty, so I know that, right? So the Guided Pathways approach to me is really taking what CTE faculty, counselors all did for a long time, and now we are scaling it up. We are scaling it up to envelope transfer, to start from the 9th grade or even sooner and go all the way to baccalaureate completion. So today, if you're here as a CTE faculty, we're going to transform the language to we're all Guided Pathways educators, or Guided Pathways coaches, or Guided Pathways faculty. We're no more CTE or transfer, because in every case, we're starting with the end in mind. Whether the end is getting a master's, a job that requires a master's degree, or a job that requires an associate's degree. So that truly is the framing piece of Guided Pathways that I've kind of owned in, and that's what we are doing at Bakersfield College as we're engaging with this work. So mostly I'm going to be focusing on 3 things where policy meets practice. Oh yeah, that's Neo, golden retriever, and he's almost 2 years old now, 94 pounds. So if you're tweeting, you can tweet hashtag California CA Guided Pathways. You can hashtag Counselors Rock, okay? So at the end of my session, I'm going to collect information that I will include in the next Trailblazer newsletter. If you are not right now subscribing to the Trailblazer newsletter, if you write your email address as I leave at the end of my talk, I'll collect it, and it comes out once every 4 or 5 months. So what I will do with what I'm asking you to do today is to get a sheet of paper, and if you have your iPhone and no sheet of paper, you can email me. I want you to reflect along with me by focus on a counselor. If you're a counselor, that's great. If you're not a counselor, think about the counselors in your high school or in your community college. And think about the role of a counselor as defined by tradition. And as we're going through my talk, I want you to contrast it very clearly at an operational level. What does the role of a counselor look like in a Guided Pathways College? What are the shifts, what are the changes that you see that need to occur? And I have a similar series of reflections on a president. You know, what has been my own shift, my own journey of being a president of a college to a president of a Guided Pathways College. So you'll have 3 opportunities in our time together to continue with your reflection, and at the end I'm going to kind of storm through and then grab at every table, if you have it laid out, I'll grab it with me and then I'll compile and sort of do an analysis of the feedback from this conference. Okay? Let's get started. So I think it's a good time to be in California community colleges. In fact, I think it is the best time to be in California community colleges. Often I have debates with my colleagues from across the state, whether it was in the 1960s when the California Higher Education Master Plan was being written. Was that the dynamic time of change, the time of equity, when the idea of the California Higher Education Master Plan was education, higher ed was a right of everyone living in California. Everyone living in California, right? What a concept. So when the structure of community colleges, CSUs and UCs came together to operationalize that equity agenda, the entire nation was watching California. But I would tell you that if I had a choice to be here then or be here now, I would say that I would choose now any day. So the community colleges are in the forefront. You know, the chancellor was talking about when, U.S. high school counselors are counseling your students going into higher ed. Do you choose UCLA or do you choose Fresno City or Clovis? And I tell you, you've got to tell them choose Clovis and Fresno City. Why? Because recently, if you read Janet Napolitano's statement, she said the future of UCs are our transfer students. Okay, so it's our transfer students, and it's not because it's just a very benevolent thing to do, because our transfer students do better than students who start as native student freshmen in the UC system. And when you're looking at progressing or advancing the equity agenda for disenfranchised populations, where do those populations go to? Community colleges. So when those students then go into the UCs and you're concerned about the equity agenda, that is the pipeline you've got to bust open and get those students to come through. And when you're talking about the CSUs, with our associate's degree transfers, those are policy level issues that have been legislated, that now when operationalized for us at the colleges are really opening up that transfer pipeline. So I'm telling you, high school counselors, please consider when you are counseling those students, when it comes through to an economic lens, when it comes to a quality education lens, that the community college is the pathway to a four-year school. The community college is the pathway to the workforce. So why is it a good time to be in California community colleges? This bar graph shows us that the total number of associate's degree is rising in the right direction and pretty rapidly. When you're looking at other performance indicators, look at the transfers to CSUs. It is moving in the right direction and quite quickly rising. When you look at the total number of ADTs, the associate degree transfers, again, you can see it's been phenomenal growth, because the future of higher education in California is through community colleges. In fact, now community colleges also offer baccalaureate programs. And when you look at the funding for community colleges, you can see here that the proposed budget is $9.2 billion. That's because we're doing something right. We are performing as community college educators. We've got equity front and center. If California needs to survive, in fact, if California needs to thrive, the investments in community colleges need to continue because we are performing. Last year, we had an influx of 150 million. So when you're thinking 9 billion and then 150 million, that's just a drop in the bucket. But that 150 million was just to get the attention of the community colleges to start scaling up guided pathways. First of all, scaling up guided pathways within the community college, but more importantly, scaling up guided pathways by working with K through 12. Scaling up guided pathways by using associate degree transfers to baccalaureate completion. In fact, in this year, it was legislated with about 168 million for strong workforce. It is actually money that has been legislated for K through 12. But it's being managed by the State Chancellor's Office, again, to signal from a policy level that that partnership and that pathway just doesn't start when a student arrives in the college or university campus, that it is incumbent on us to work together and create that pathway starting at high school. In fact, I would suggest that the age of dual enrollment is gone and has evolved to the age of early college. Dual enrollment, the connotation of dual enrollment is looking at single classes that students get dual credit both for high school and for college. But the pathways movement, the pathways framework is now evolving dual enrollment from single courses to hoping that we can work through our academic senates and get faculty minimum qualified to teach a class at the high school, to thinking not at a course level, but thinking if we have a cohort of students, cohort of 300 students coming into a high school, and I'm going to be using McFarland High School because we're starting an early college program at McFarland High School. So we're morphing our language into, we've got a series, cafeteria style courses, dual enrollment, to thinking, if you have a cohort of 300 students in a small high school that are starting as McFarland Cougars, what can we do as a community college, as counselors working at the college with counselors working at McFarland High School, to say that all those 300 students are starting in the 9th grade as college students. They're early college students, so that student is a cougar and a renegade the day they walk onto the McFarland High School campus. So that is the kind of evolution that Guided Pathways is bringing. And I'm so excited. I didn't realize that the topic of your conference was on technology, because the systems and the data analytics that technology can provide for us is going to help us take our high-touch approach to the next level. Because our students, most of them are first-generation students. So having the technology helps, but it is the analytics of the technology that can then help us sort of move in with the intelligence that the technology provides to coach and help the students through high-touch be successful. So in 2018-19, we now have the new funding formula at the community college level that is truly emphasizing performance-based funding. So when we're talking about the very active policy changes in Sacramento and the active changes on our campus, I want you to pause for a moment and think about last year on your campus. Were there arguments about policy changes in Sacramento? Were there disagreements? Were there furious arguments happening in the curriculum committee, in your assessment groups, in your budget committee? Well, that is a good sign, because that shows that we have faculty and staff engaging in this very active, dynamic time to be in California. And for me, specifically California community colleges, but I think the emphasis is the pathway from high school to college to university. So in this active environment, do you feel they're totally exhausted? I do too, but it's an inspiring time because it's a time where the change is real. And when the change is real, you know that going into the following year, life as you knew it is remarkably different. High school counselors, have you heard about the legislation AB 705? Have you heard that? So what is AB 705 talking about? You know, the idea that a student has a pre-calculus class in high school, then they come to Bakersfield College or to Fresno City, and then they take that dreaded placement test, which is Compass or Accuplacer. They had a bad day. They didn't have breakfast in the morning. And guess what? They placed into elementary algebra. Those days are gone. And those days are gone because of policy change. And that policy change is going to impact practice both at the high schools as well as the community colleges. And it's real. It is real because we have developed a series of courses that are below transfer level, and now that law doesn't allow us to do that. So we're having these vigorous discussions, and at the end of the day, when we go home, it's like, okay, it's margarita time, because there's absolutely no energy anymore. But what keeps us going is, again, coming back to that student. So, to get started with guided pathways, to be able to communicate, there's always a language and understanding. So if I were to ask you the question, and this is more for my colleagues from high school, when we talk about guided pathways and to have some kind of reference points, if we talk about the 4 pillars, does that make sense to you? The 4 pillars of guided pathways? Yes, no? It does? Okay, you can respond. In the community college realm, we have used this as our touchstone so that we can norm with our conversation. So when we talk about the 4 pillars of guided pathways, the first pillar is clarifying the path. And I understand there's a breakout session on clarifying the path by looking at program mapping. And I'm going to touch on that for a moment from a technology standpoint. So it's clarifying the path. $168 million has been legislated for high schools to turn in proposals before the end of the year. I don't remember if it's September or October or November. I attended a webinar, but it's sometime this fall semesters. You get to put in a proposal, okay? It's under the strong workforce. I see Tony over there, who's the one working on our campus on this project with the high schools. But the whole proposal needs to be pathways from the high schools to the colleges meeting a workforce need in the region. So clarifying the path is extremely, extremely important. Entering the path is where we use the student grades coming from the high school to the community college, not relying on those tests anymore, AB 705, that's entering the path. And it is extremely critical for our counselors across the sectors to be tightly connected. And then once they come to us, then keeping them on the path, and then making sure that these are critical thinkers, that we're ensuring they're learning so they're prepared for the workforce. So this is just language to make sure we're kind of normed, okay? And in the community college system, we have the Vision for Success that tells us that our performance-based funding is based on increasing degrees and certificates. So with that as the backdrop, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the funding formula and about the $168 million that is out there and up for grabs, and the DSNs who do an amazing job to really systematically make the connections among the institutions and really operationalize this big vision ideas. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the more we can make sure that the proposals that are going in for the $168 million in response to the funding formula are all constructed with looking at the end in mind, by looking at it from a pathways approach. So in the past, for community colleges, we were funded on access, 100%. If you have 5,000 FTES this year and 6,000 the next year, then you get funded for that difference. That's the additional income that you get. I'm simplifying it, of course. But moving into the future, you will see that only 60% of our funding is going to be on access, because the other 40% is split 20% on equity and 20% on completion. I'm just looking at the time. I'm not doing text messages or any of those things. I kept trying to tell the cop I wasn't texting. And it was, I swear I was driving like at 10 miles an hour. And then I see the lights, it's just crazy. But anyway, so that's what I want to know. Is it kind of a thing about Clovis PD that they do these tickets? Because if that's the case, the next time we have a conference here at DSM, make sure in the email you say that we really behave properly as we bring them to Clovis. Okay, so back to the funding formula. The 20% on equity, the way that the metric being used for the equity funding is based on our Dreamers. So the AB 540 students, and I think in high school it's a different legislation. It's not 540, it's something else. It's SB something. Anyway, so that's part of that 20% of supplemental awards. It's our Pell Grant recipients. So those are the equity indicators. And then the performance indicators are for transfer students getting your English and math kind of knocked out the first year, and then completing degrees and certificates. So for community college colleagues here, our budget committee got together with our guided pathways committee and came up with what we're calling a funding formula calculator. And this is going to make it into my next, the next Trailblazer letter that's going to go out. So again, if you want to be on the Trailblazer, make sure you write your email address and we'll get you on that. So you can see from the different line items here that the equity pieces of the Pell Grant, you get points. So the calculator is an Excel spreadsheet that we've developed and we're fine-tuning it. The possible points, and if you achieve it, what is the funding amount that you get? So in this particular scenario, for the California Promise Grant, which is the BOG waiver, this particular student gets the $919. So the calculator kicks in the funding back to the college. And then you can see if the student has completed the transfer level English and math in the first year, you can see the points kicking in, and then the dollar amounts. And we added inmate scholars. Actually, the example I should have used here is dual enrollment. Dual enrollment is considered a special admit. So again, for high school counselors, if they start thinking about early college, and if there's one, there may be many things I want to leave back in today's conference, but right now, one of the things I'm really passionate about is really converting our dual enrollment mindset into dual enrollment into the early college pathway. So I'll keep repeating that. So you can see that for those special admits, that there's again points added. And again, the idea for the calculator is not to be very precise, but it's to give you a sense that as counselors, you've been talking about these pathways with a student-centric mindset. And now that mindset has become the way the budget people need to be thinking about it. So that policy and that student-centeredness is now influencing the way the budget gets rolled out to the colleges. So here is an example that our team at BC put together, and we're just kind of rolling it out and we're playing with this model so you guys get to see it hot off the press, so to say. So this is a CTE student. You can see, with the check marks, and is this a student, an AB 540 student, a dreamer? Okay, we get points. So it's almost like you collect points and you kind of have a money bag, you collecting dollars. And that kind of sounds crass, but it's something, again, that we know was the right thing to do to get students through and to the next spot. We always knew that, right? But now we can actually come at it from a fiscal lens. all the different lenses are now converging in this guided pathways era that we're at. So this is just to give you an idea, and now you can see, our folks, Craig Hayward was having fun with it. So Bobby, who's doing the Industrial Automation Bachelor's Program at Bakersfield College, you can see to get a baccalaureate, you get 3 points, but the associate's degree transfer is worth 4 points. So by giving points, they're signaling kind of the value in what we want to see happening in kind of California. So the main idea today is for you to get a sense of how intimately California funding is shifting, like that $168 million for strong workforce. The way it is structured, again, is to force that pathway conversation to happen. And finally, this is an example of an ADT, and you'll see, curiously enough, and I didn't realize it until I kind of played around with the funding calculator, that if you have a student in 2 years, the per year return on an ADT transfer student for Bakersfield College ends up being higher than the 4-year baccalaureate. It's a little trivial, fun thing to do and kind of see it. All right, I'm going to skip past this, looking at the time. But the main message that I wanted to communicate with this slide is to say what I started off with, the idea of the student journey, which was something that the whole college did not really feel connected to. I remember when I was in Mount faculty, I walked in and I taught my calculus class. And I was only focused on getting the student through that calculus class, right? The counselors were responsible of making sure the students completed the degree. But now, with all of the policy shifts, that idea of completing the degree, which was part of what only was sort of centered in one department, is now influencing the conversation of all the groups on campus, all the departments on campus. And so fundamentally, you can kind of walk into any meeting, sort of muscle up and say, hey, I'm a counselor. And I'm here to tell you what we need to be doing, because if not, the funding is going to go down. You can walk into an enrollment management committee and say, hey, I'm a counselor. And let me tell you that if we are not focused on looking at the connections between the high schools through AB 705 through the community colleges, that whole piece of that policy, that's not going to be good for the institution. So those ideas are now permeating all of the structures within the Guided Pathways College. Okay, now it's your time as I take a break. You've got a minute. I want you to whip out your writing instruments, whether it is you're going to email me. And please take this seriously, because your thoughts and reflections are going to contribute to the evolving change of the role of counselors with the Guided Pathways. So go ahead and jot down a few notes. Or maybe I'll ask a few of you to report out as well. So the counselor then and the counselor of the future within a Guided Pathways framework. And I shouldn't say Guided Pathways College, I should say Guided Pathways framework. So you've got a minute.
Do you want us to reflect on the role?
Sherry.
Hi. Do you want us to reflect on the role, or I'm a little confused?
I want you to be writing and what I'm going to be collecting at the end. So take a minute just to write down your thoughts. What is something that counselors did in the past? What do you see the shift being for counselors in the future? So I want you to write it down. Okay, so this is not a discussion activity. This is a very zen, quiet writing activity, because we're conducting a small research project. What you write is going to go into larger analysis. Write clearly so I can read it when I get back. Don't worry, Elise, I'm looking at the time. I will wrap up.
You're fine.
Do I have 2 volunteers to use your loud voice to give one example of what you think the shift is? Could have 2 volunteers and then I'm going to continue. I thought counselors would talk, as I say right over there. Go ahead, please stand up and introduce yourself.
My name is Maribel. I'm a counselor at San Belleville, and I think we're shifting into case management. Case management.
That's great. Moving into a case management framework. Was there another? Please.
I'm Regina. I am from McFarland High School in Kerr County. And I just attended a CCGI workshop yesterday. I don't know if you've heard of that, but my vision for the future is that we use systems that can go with students. So it is a student journey. So it's following high school, community college, and into the CSUs. And also that we can partner high school counselors with community college counselors. And we don't have those conversations with CSU and UC counselors where we get together and talk about this future.
Thank you. I'd like to put a plug into, since it's a technology conference for CCGI that our counselor from McFarland, woohoo, just discussed. CCGI at the systems level, the CSU Chancellor's Office and our Community College Chancellor's Office and K through 12 are looking at building that system for data exchange. So if your community college or your high school is not participating, I hope you will make an effort to contact whoever you need to contact on your campus to kind of promote that idea. And the Central Valley Higher Education Consortium, 11 colleges with the Central Valley, have really committed to using CCGI. So thank you for that. Okay. All right. Well, you get the last word, then I'm moving. Keep going. Yes.
My name is Kamala Gomez. I'm an advisor at Bakersfield College. So for the future, I see linking our high school students with our industry sectors using our program of studies, and then connecting them, finding their career goal with that industry sector, going on to the pathway to college and the 2-year college or the early college with their dual enrollment, articulation, concurrent enrollment, and then off to university and then career.
Great. Thank you. When Pam used the word program of study, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about language and hierarchy within the Pathways framework, if this is helpful. So in the Pathways hierarchy, we use program of study for certificates or degrees. So for example, for agriculture at BC, we have ag business, we have mech ag, we have horticulture, we have certificates and degrees. Those are programs of study. And then they all link up to the higher level as a major. And then what we're starting to do, because I don't know, we have like over 60 majors, so maybe over 100 majors maybe. We're clustering majors to create these meta majors that was going to be my concluding set of slides, which I'm not going to get to because I've run out of, I won't get to that. But we've clustered into 10 meta majors, and that meta major organization has been hugely helpful to really go into, you talked about case management, that's brilliant, because that's the shift that we're seeing on our campus. But because we don't have sufficient number of counselors and advisors, what we're doing is cohort management, but it's the same idea of case management, right? At a cohort level. And this hierarchy of clustering students has helped us get our arms around looking at, rather than looking at 33,000 students, We've got them into groups called meta majors, but then we can drill down to the program of study that Pam was referring to. So that language helps you tease out something. I just wanted to throw that out. Okay, so moving along, I think I'm going to conclude with this piece of information because I'm going to run out of time at that point. And as you think of ideas for your little note card, keep jotting it out because I promise you I will collect it and analyze it. So clarify the path, to me, is a significant piece of work that we need to undertake. It is complex, it is fraught with problems, and this piece of work results in lots of debates and discussions, okay? So in the past, at least, in most of our colleges, but at our college we had the catalog with a lot of options for students, and they didn't know how to navigate it, and we had lists, and so now we have moved to a visual representation called the Program Mapper, and there's an in-depth presentation that you can get the details. So I'm not going to go into the details of this particular tool. But the point that I want to make to you is the technology is not the answer, but the technology forced us to work with CSU Bakersfield to sit down in faculty groups and hammer out the pathways. Can you imagine faculty trying to figure out what that gen ed choice is going to be, how difficult those conversations are? But can you imagine how amazing it's for a student to come, click through, boom, 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 they're done with their ed plan, they want to shift their plan, boom, they change it, they can see things. And so the interactivity with this tool is amazing, but it's that work that went into the structure. And so when we were focusing on this piece of work, Cypress College started focusing on the high school to community college focused on CTE. So we right now are partnering with Cypress, and we've got our accreditation site visits, so things on campus are like after October 4th, after October 4th. So after October 4th, when our evaluators are gone, then we're going to make that connection and look at the same tool that they've been using for the high school to the community college. And in my mind, I was thinking this is such an appropriate time to leverage this tool because of that $168 million that is forcing that kind of a pathway discussion across the education sectors. So if you can just keep this at the back of your mind, and if high schools, you're working with your community college and other partners, you might be able to leverage this to get that instructional pathway conversation really focused, and you can use this to leverage that particular conversation. So I'm just going to skip through this and not focus on the details. I will say it starts with the end in mind. It's a career. You start with what jobs are out there. So that information is provided for the student, and then you reverse engineer, okay? But again, remember, pathways don't limit and lock in students. A lot of the humanities faculty are going to come and say, well, exploration is the name of the game. But I can tell you, when my daughter went to UC San Diego, and we're talking about a student who is academically prepared, not about our first generation students who come to Bakersfield College, right? When she went in there, she had a plan defined for her, and she kind of hopped on that and she got that completed. So for us to give our students so many choices without the guidance, I think, is extremely irresponsible, and it doesn't limit the choices. In fact, it empowers them because it clearly shows the choices for the students, and if they decide to change or switch, they can see what the impact of that change is going to be. So if there is still a residual hesitancy that pathways are a limiting factor, you can boldly stand up and say, no, it's not. It's like having Google Maps. It really leverages you to be able to explore if that's what you choose to do, except don't hold it in your hand when you're driving through Clovis because you're about to get a ticket. Just a few days ago, from the Chancellor's office, that's Laura Pope, Vice Chancellor, who's been given the responsibility for guided pathways for the state, and that's Montagne Quimblin, who is the CTE person. She's now also leading the Digital Futures work, just incredibly exciting stuff that's happening at the systems level. So they sent out a letter to the community college CEOs. So again, go back and ping your president and say, at the conference, I heard that a solicitation has come out from the state chancellor's office, and could we consider participating in it? And the guy that you see there, his name is Craig Hayward, and the email actually goes to him because he's coordinating this piece of work for the program mapper, and they're considering scaling it up across California. So getting in at the front end, you can really shape the work. Right now we have 3 colleges, Cypress, Cabrillo, and Bakersfield College working with the Chancellor's office, and we're taking it to the next level, inviting the next 10 community colleges or a region to come as a whole. So if a region decides to come, then they can come into the next pilot program. So I'm going to give you a little bit more time, and then I'll take it to the finish line. So some are writing, so get back into writing. Any more thoughts that have popped up into your head? What is the shift of the role of a counselor? Give specifics, write down specifics. The devil is in the detail. Anyone want to share? All right, we'll take two more comments, and then keep thinking about some questions that you might have, because I'll be closing out with questions. Let me get some counselor enthusiasm here, you guys. All right, please.
So, hi, I'm Julie from Pleasant City College. One of the biggest shifts I see is that counselors are no longer just doing student ed planning and telling students what classes to take. We now have a role in making sure they complete certificates and degrees. So that's a real shift, because basically we were just focusing on making sure they were in the right classes. Now we need to follow those students, put in whatever resources and support they need to make sure we see completion.
Very good, very good. I mean, it's almost a shift, maybe 10 years ago, or maybe more than that, there was a shift from teaching to learning, right? It was not about teaching, but it was ensuring that students learned, and the way, that was what struck me when you were speaking, it is ensuring, not just giving them the math, but making sure they get onto the path and they complete, which is a huge responsibility. Please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Francisco Corchado. I'm from Cardinal College. I would say for us, the biggest thing that I want to see is more work with the faculty, working with them to kind of see what their perspective is on how we can better counsel our students in regards to their classes. Because I think as counselors, we all have kind of an agenda of how we create an ed plan. But I want to see what different departments would say as to how we can build an ed plan to kind of better train our students, and so that they're better prepared when they take certain classes versus kind of like what we do. Not to say that we're wrong, but my perspective would be nice.
That's an excellent point, and I definitely see the conversations in the curriculum committee changing. Go back and think about your curriculum committee conversations, right? I mean, the debate that happens there, what math should be there. I mean, it's very, very much a disciplined faculty conversation, but I see the counselors really being bold, because the counselors really, really understand the student journey like no one else. So I see the counselors really bringing out their voices, your voices, and having a very, very important role in curricular discussions, which in the past has been dominated by disciplined faculty. Whether all of your faculty organizations within your college or your high school structures, think about it, whether it is the Senate, curriculum, assessment, the counselors need to come at it, because you always work with students first. All right, so with that, be thinking about your questions as I wrap up. So I'm not going to go through the slides. I have a sense that Elise will have these slides available for you on some website if you need them. But we talked about the meta major, so you can go back and look at the slides as an example. Many colleges now already have created a meta major, so it might be, you know, an old concept. But you'll get an idea of how this has been a powerful shift on our campus. The other thing that we have done at Bakersfield College that I think is extremely effective is really creating a completion coaching team around each of the meta majors. You know, our colleague from Fresno City was talking about the importance of making sure every student completes, not just providing the map. Providing the map is like getting into your car and mapping out your map on Google Maps, and you have it, and then you just sit there. And then you say, oh, we've done the map, right? No, you need to get on the road, and then when you reach your destination, that's when it's completed. But to do that by yourself is difficult. So you really need to leverage the faculty, the financial aid folks. And at Bakersfield College, we have a group called the Data Coaches, who really are starting to progress in their sophistication in providing the data analytics so that counselors and ed advisors can use it in a high-touch strategy. And I think there is a breakout session that's focused on using data analytics for this. And again, again, another colleague from Hartnell talked about working with faculty. So you can see in this particular graphic that creating a team of about 20, 30 people with a meta major of ag and nutrition, just creating those people, and the conversation is about the student. Guess who's leading the conversation? It has to be the counselor, right? Because no one else is an expert in that conversation but the counselor. And the counselor is the expert when it comes to a pathways discussion. So all of a sudden you see your discipline faculty paying attention. Okay, so this has been a very helpful strategy to get a culture shift on our campus to discipline faculty really engaging with the completion agenda. So you can see again how we've broken up our meta major here into major and into the program of study. And some, we are starting to generate our program review data based on meta major as well. So in this particular bar graph, you see that the awards are organized by our data coaches to be represented by meta major. Again, that cohort management to completion, which is another important point that was made, okay? Clicking through the slides. Again, you can see meta majors on the left, and one of our momentum points is to complete 15 credits per semester. If you want to complete a 60-credit degree, then you better do 15 credits. And if you end up doing 12 credits, what do? You take summer school and then knock out those credits so you get to 60 in 2 years. So again, this is just, the idea here is to have the entire organization shifting to representing the momentum points by meta major, so you're case managing or cohort managing. And again, it's a pathways concept. I think with this, I'm going to take a few questions while I invite you for the next 5-6 minutes to complete your writing, and then we'll be wrapping up. Question? Oh, there's a microphone there. Go ahead.
There you go.
Are you going to fight the ticket?
I wasn't looking at my cell phone, I don't think. No, I'm going to pay it. Question?
Could you what does CTGI stand for, the acronym, please?
I don't know, I need help here. CCGI. It's a counseling and guidance initiative. I don't know what the first C stands for. California Colleges Guidance Initiative. And the Community College State Chancellor's Office has been working for over 8 months now to come up with a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Education for the transfer of data. That has not been finalized. And the CCGI is a way in which we can do the data exchange that will help community colleges with kind of the AB 705 discussions. And the Central Valley Higher Education Consortium has sort of committed to that. Okay? I'm very good at waiting patiently. Okay, so to start wrapping up, you owe me 2 things. One, leave your paper back there. If you can stack it up, I'll grab it on my way out. And if you want to be part of the Trailblazer newsletter, go ahead and put your email. And with that, have a great conference. I'm sure you're going to have a great day. Happy Guided Path